I'm joined here by Melissa McGeehee, and she is our enterprise and GIS analyst at the city here, and is amazing teacher, and I'm excited to share some of the data that we have available for everyone here at the city. Today for the data workshop, we're going to talk about data that might help you with your Marianne Corridor neighborhood grant. But just so everyone knows, we will have neighborhood grant workshops that focus solely on the grant program. So today, really, we want to dive deep into the data and not so much the grant program and process, but we will have more opportunities for that as we go on. Real briefly, though, because I know some of you joining us may not be familiar with the grant program, so you kind of have a high-level understanding of some of the connections we might make during the workshop is it's related for our neighborhood services office to our performance measure about feeling invited and welcome to participate in city decision-making processes. And what the grant program does, it puts that decision right in residents' hands. You get a direct funding opportunity for projects that you've identified as a need in your neighborhood, and that's going to help make the community better. Each year we have $350,000 in total funding, and each neighborhood can apply for up to $20,000 for projects. One of the things that we do emphasize is resident participation and involvement in selection, coordination, and completion of projects. And just at the bottom, there are some pictures of past grants and just kind of gives you an example of things that might have been funded. The grants are a competitive process, and part of that is an evaluation process. And so, when Melissa's giving you all these great tips and ways to find data, the idea is you can tie that back to your grant application, and it really does help strengthen your ask and tell the story of why it might be important to your neighborhood and really meets a need or community benefit that's out there. And who's eligible for the grants are our neighborhood associations, our homeowner associations, our crime-free multi-housing certified properties. The map you see there of our associations is one of the data layers that Melissa can share with you guys and kind of show how you can use those, and that's available on our website as well. In general, the applications are open now, the due date's in April. And then again, we'll have a neighborhood grant workshop that talks about the process, all the different types of projects, questions and answers with all the staff that help us out during that grant process in January. And we've got a website that you can always go to for more details. So with that, I am going to stop sharing here and turn it over to Melissa, and she's going to lead us through the rest of our workshop.
Hello. Okay. Oh, there it is. Okay. Wasn't seeing my share screen option. All right. Give me just a moment. Okay. All right. So hello, as Shauna said, I'm Melissa McGeehee, a GIS data analyst, and GIS stands for Geographic Information Systems. Essentially what I do is map making, data visualization. I also work with our Open Data program to help get that process moving and keep the data updated. Today, I'm going to talk to you about the new neighborhood grants and equity map, the Open Data portal. I'm going to show you how to make a map using the data that you find in that Open Data portal. I'm going to touch briefly on the performance measure dashboards and some training and other resources that are available to you. Go ahead and get out of this. In the chat, I have shared a link to this Tempe Equity Data map. And when you open it, it defaults to just the outline of Tempe. So if that's all you see when you open it, that is correct. At the top, you can type in an address or a place name. When you have the neighborhood association layer open, you can search by the name of the neighborhood association. Here is a link to a how-to guide. So you click on that, it opens in a new tab, and it goes over how to navigate this application. And then also down here at the bottom, you click on this and you can see a table of all of the data that is included here. And so this might come in handy if you're trying to just do a quick, there's a lot of fields, so there's a lot of information in this particular map. So you just click on the tab and it shows you that data. I'm going to close out of that. And then down here is the table of contents for all of the different data that we have available. This last one is the neighborhood grants. So you click on that, and these are layers. We have the data organized in a few different ways. The first one here is a summary of all the neighborhood grants from 1994 to 2022. You click on this button here and a layer will appear. And these are each of the neighborhood and residential associations. If you click on this little caret, it drops down, it shows you the legend. So the darker the color, the higher the number. In this case, it's dollar amounts. So you can see the darker areas, these are the ones that have over the years have accumulated a higher number of grant awards. And you can click on one of these and it will show you how many grants over that period of time they have received, the total number awarded, the name of the association, and the type. And you can click out of that. So you can explore all of the different associations just to see how much and how many grants have been received. You click this again and that legend goes away. We also have it organized by year. So this is fiscal year 2021, 2022. And again, you can do the drop down and you see the top one is the highest amount approved. And you click on the shape and it tells you the association, or in this case, associations, because some of the grants are multiple associations applying together, and how much they received. And this particular one gives a brief description of the grant itself. And so you can click around to get a general sense of what people are applying for and what is being awarded. And you can do that for each year. You can put them all on at the same time if you really want to. It's a little easier to read if you do one at a time, and just click them to make them go away. And then down here is all of the grants that have been awarded. And this one's just organized by the type of association, whether it's homeowner or neighborhood. But again, it's 1994 to 2022 fiscal years. And again, you click on that, and this one shows you the name of the association, the fiscal year, and how much was awarded or approved. And if there is, and you just click the X to close it. If there's just a name, then that means this association has not received any grants. I'm going to turn that off for just a moment and close that. Down here, we have a few other data sets. I think the ones that would probably be relevant is possibly income. So we have where you can click on it and you can see the poverty rate. And again, the darker the number, the higher, in this case, percentage. So this is the percentage of the population in a census tract that lives in poverty. And as you can see, this area right here is a higher poverty area. So again, you click on it and it tells you what percent of the population in this census tract lives in poverty. You can also do it, we have median income. So that means in this area, half of the population makes less than 53,000, half makes more. So median's like right in the middle. And then also, if you scroll down a little bit, you can see that it's by income band. Now, what you can do with this information is, let's say we want to do poverty rate. I'm going to go back down here to my neighborhood grants. And I'm going to choose this bottom one because the colors are a little bit easier. They contrast a little bit better. And you can, and then I'm going to close that because I don't need it. And then you can zoom in using either your mouse or these buttons over here. And you can see, so perhaps you're in Tempe Gardens. You can see that Tempe Gardens has a poverty rate of 18.1%. That might be something that's useful for your grant to include in the application. You can also see surrounding ones. This one's a lower percentage of poverty. So you can do that with any of the available data down here. I'm going to turn this one off. I'm going to leave my neighborhoods up. I'm going to show you here, this one is disability. So again, it's organized by census tracts. This is the total population with any kind of a disability that has been reported. And again, drop that down, darker color, higher percentage has a disability of some kind. So again, you click on that and this tells you 10% of the population in this whole area has a disability. If your grant has something to do with access, mobility, this one's ambulatory. So again, you can see this one has 5.6% in this area have a disability that is due to their mobility. And there's also vision. And again, 2.3%. So there's some different ways to get some specific data about your given neighborhood association. I'm going to close that. And the last thing we have here that I think would be relevant is our demographics. So you can look at it by race, ethnicity, Spanish speaking, there's education level if that happens to be relevant, and age. Unfortunately, the data comes to us in bands of 5 years, so there's a lot of layers. But again, you just click on those and it tells you that in this area, 2.3% of the population is 75 to 79 years old. You can also do gender as well. So those are just some quick ways to combine get the boundary of your neighborhood grant and see what data is what data is available for your neighborhood. Are there any questions on how to navigate, what data is available, what information is available? All right. And then let me just make sure I didn't miss anything.
Melissa, we did have a hand raised. Michael, did you have a question?
Yeah, so is this based on the 2020 census data?
I believe it is 2019. It's usually, my apologies. It's usually about a year behind because it takes the census a while to process the data. I don't believe we have added the 2020 yet. But it's usually, we keep it as current as the census allows us to.
Yes, right. Okay, so at least it's not 10 years old. Okay, thank you.
No.
This is Stephanie Dietrich. I work with Melissa. So the census should be releasing or may have just released the results of the 2020 census. And so we're hoping to have whatever the newest version of census data that's provided updated by January. And our normal process is to try to keep up with whatever the census releases each year. So it'll be about a year off just based on how the census releases the data.
All right, so sorry. Okay. The other thing I was going to show you is our OpenTempe website. And just as a resource that is available to you, it's open.tempe.gov. And you can scroll down to see the different resources we have here. You can see our strategic priorities and the performance measures. You can access our data catalog. You can also access Open Books, which is our budget data, and our data academy. You can also, I prefer to use the tabs at the top to do my navigation, but it's up to your preference. But you can click on performance measures In here, you can see all of our strategic priorities. And if you click on one of these, it will list out all of the performance measures. You can either scroll to see them, and it shows the title, gives a brief description, the baseline or where we started, the target, where we want to be, and then our current status. You can also click on explore the performance measure, and it takes you to a more detailed page about that specific performance measure and gives a historic record again, as well as our current status and a more descriptive overview of why the measure matters and our strategies that we're attempting to meet our goals, as well as links to data. And then also we have our Data Academy. Where we have training videos where it shows you how to interact with the map, how to use ArcGIS Online, which is the platform where we make the maps, and I'll be showing you that in just a moment. We also have videos on how to navigate the data catalog, which I'm going to go to in a moment as well. This performance measured page that I was just on. And then down here we have some, Esri is the company that creates the software that we use, and they have several free courses that you can take, little tutorials and things like that. So if you're really interested in learning how to make maps and using data, this is a good resource for you. Also on our About page here, it gives an overview about our Open Data program or What Works Cities certification. You scroll down, give some policy information. Down here, we also have, if you have any comments or feedback you'd like to, maybe a resource that you'd like to see would be useful, especially in like the Data Academy. You'd like to learn how to do something specific, just click on this. It'll take you to a form and you fill out what you want, and then we'll respond to that. Also down here is an open data request. If there is an open data, what you think would be an open data set that should be available, you can request that, and we will review and determine whether or not that we have the data and that we can publish it, because there are some data that is protected and we cannot publish, but we'll review that and respond to you accordingly. So I just wanted to point those out before going to the data catalog. Excuse me, which is where you can find all of our published data. We can search here, which I'll do in just a moment. You can also search by different categories. So it's basically data that's been filtered by transportation or infrastructure. And then again, links to our performance measure. And then some different applications or story maps that we have created that help you use the data that we have. So if you're interested in seeing how the results of our COVID-19 wastewater, you can see that in real time. We have Tempe development projects, Vision Zero. You can also click to view more. There are more available. This just gives you kind of a snapshot. And this is just our most viewed. So those are all there available for you. I'm going to scroll back to the top. So for the neighborhood grants, some things that you might find useful in your applications is, for instance, actually I'm going to do public art. So I'm just going to type art, and it gives you a drop down of existing data sets that we have that you can choose from. And we want data. There's different, like this one's an application, which could also be useful. And if you're wanting to look specifically at the data, you click on that. And this brings you to a map of all of the public art in Tempe. And this might be a good one to, if your grant is related to public art, you could overlay this with that neighborhood association map that I showed you. And I'm going to show you on a different data set how to do that. But you might be able to show, like, maybe your neighborhood's association is down here. You might see, look, there's very little public art down here. And, you know, we would want to contribute to that. So you can also just take a quick look by clicking on the points, and you'll see some information about the artwork that's there. And it has quite like a nice description. You can also go over here to view full details. And it gives you some information about the specific data. So this tells you what it is, and it also gives you what's called a data dictionary. And what the data dictionary does is it tells you what all of those fields, all those columns, what their titles are. It gives you an example of each, and then it tells you what it means. And this can be very useful if you're looking at an unfamiliar data and you don't know what a particular field means. This will help you, it should define it for you. And then you can also, again, get back to that map view. You can also download it. I would do as a CSV, which is similar to a spreadsheet. And you just click download, let it process. And depending on how big the data set is, it could be really fast or it could take a really long time depending on how many records there are. And you can save that to your computer, and it looks like a spreadsheet. So if that's a view that you need, that is an option there. I am going to go back up here to the data catalog. Another one that may be relevant is traffic. So again, we're going to get a few different options. And if you need the data, you can just click on that. But a nice useful one is this map one, where it shows you the volume of the data. So how much traffic is on a given street. You see a legend here, and the thicker lines means a higher volume and a thinner line means a lower volume. So this might be useful for a neighborhood association where you know what's near you, and you can see, like, if there's something related to traffic in your grant, you can say, well, this one's a low volume, or this one right here is a high volume segment of a road. So that's one way to get some more information. I'm going to hit the back button. And one data set that is not currently uploaded, but we are in process of adding it, is tree inventory. And this is what it will look like. And it shows the trees that we currently have in Tempe. And as you can see, there's a lot that are clustered together, and you can see along the streets. But you can also click on the point and get some information about the tree itself, what type, how tall it is, its diameter, all of that information if you need to. So you'll be able to pair this with that neighborhood association map and see what kind of trees are in your area. So we're hoping to get that available in the next couple weeks. Maybe at least by latest by the first of the year. So now I'm going to go ahead and show you how to take the neighborhood association boundary map and pair it with a data set to look at it for your neighborhood. Before I do that, are there any questions, comments, anything else you'd like me to show you before I move into this?
Melissa, where would we find information about tree coverage and the city goal to increase the shade coverage by up to, I think it's 25%? Do you have performance indicators on that?
Stephanie, do you know the performance?
I think it's 411.
Okay, thank you.
If it's not, you can search for canopy coverage or trees and it'll bring it up, but.
And tree map only covers public space type trees. It doesn't
Yes.
cover like schools or homes or.
There's
So-
a, oops, I'm sorry. There's a study going on right now with Richard Atkins, the urban forester, actually looking to calculate canopy coverage for the whole city, including private property. So it would be, if it's in the city of Tempe, that canopy coverage would be calculated. And so we're working on that now. I'm not sure when it's going to be released, but definitely within the first 2 months of next year. And that data will be provided here with what Melissa is showing you. There will be a separate story map, which will explain it, explain how it was calculated, and then they'll provide you a map of that data. And then it'll be available on the Open Data portal, which is what Melissa has been showing you, so that it's a more robust representation, since we are looking at canopy coverage for residential, commercial, and city property.
So how often does that get updated? Like, for example, my neighbor took out 4 huge trees that had like 100 probably feet each, and a lot of trees in our neighborhood have disappeared with some of the rental companies buying. So are they going to keep that up, or how do they do that? Yeah.
So that's a good point, which I don't necessarily know that we've been looking at, when we're talking about how often to update, the fact that trees don't necessarily grow very fast. So how fast is the canopy going to change? But I think that's a good observation, that if you do have some of these larger, older trees that have significant coverage that are torn down for whatever reason, that could have a big impact. And so I think we were looking at every 3 years. But that's actually something I'll go back and talk to Richard about. As long as we can get our hands on the data, which is kind of the challenging part, it's satellite imagery, but as long as we can get our hands on that, I think that there's potential to do it more often, specifically for the reason that you identified. So I appreciate the comment, and I'll circle back with him to talk about that.
Yeah, I got one other thing on that is, when people come, and this is just something to look into, but maybe they're, with people taking down trees like that, to think about some policy, talk with Richard about that, maybe about, actually removing trees like that are significant in the canopy. And I have one other question, and that is on like home remodeling. And I was just trying to find this today is, which homes in our neighborhood, have been permitted, and the density of that, and I'm kind of particularly interested because in finding that in cases where a home has become a college rental and they have to kind of mother-in-law quarters on their property. So I was trying to figure out whether it's permitted, but it's also interesting to know the density of it too.
So
That
I know we're saying a lot of stuff is coming next year, but you're hitting on a lot of interesting topics. So building permit data just across the country in general is one of the top asked for open data sets from cities. And so we're currently working on putting together that data now to release that publicly. Since it is going to be something we think that there's a lot of interest in, we'll also create some sort of map viewer so that you can just see the data instead of having to build anything on your own. But we're actively working on that now with community development, and that will have information about where the permits are located, and it'll include the variety of permits. So whatever types of permits the city offers. And so it will show where they are. It'll provide those dates. So are they something that's active? And then it'll have some sort of description about what the permits for.
Okay. I got one other question.
And we've got a couple after you. So yeah, if
Okay,
you've got another one.
I'll be really quick. Okay, so there's, a large companies that are kind of buying a lot of homes, like Invitation Homes. And so would that data be mappable in some way, like which homes are Airbnb and which are rentals, or, is there, I mean, I kind of did my own study and got all the Invitation Home ones to see the density because it was actually kind of interesting, but that's it. I don't want to keep anybody else from talking.
Yeah, that's one is uncertain. So that data is actually available from Maricopa County. They have that as part of their assessor's data, but that's something I'll circle back with on, I don't know if that would be community development or tax and license to talk to them about whether or not that data is available.
And then John, you had a question, and we've got a couple in the chat, Melissa.
Sure. I think it got answered along the way, which is that as of the moment, at least, the tree coverage within an association is not in the data that you have.
In the density data, correct.
correct?
But in the, yeah, and so that's not currently available.
Around, but not within.
Yes.
Okay, thank you for the clarification.
And then Melissa, there was a question about including data for residential streets for traffic, not just the arterials and collectors.
So, sorry, Melissa, I'm stealing your thunder. So the data that we have for traffic counts reflects data that the city of Tempe either takes just as part of their annual, or however many often, data collection. A lot of times data on residential or local streets aren't collected unless there is a project occurring where the traffic counts would be needed. So any traffic counts that have been taken will be included on the map, but there's not going to be a large percentage of those counts covering residential streets.
And then there's a question as a follow-up on the building permits. Will there be data on how many households or rental properties?
So yeah, that was what I was talking about. I don't think there have been any conversations about releasing any data that we have for that, because that doesn't go through the permitting process. We know that the county does have that information because they do require, at least for rentals, they do require licensing for that, or for the state, but it's part of the assessor's data. So I'll look into that to see if we have any options for providing that information.
If anyone else has any other questions, otherwise I didn't see any more. Melissa.
Okay, thank you.
Real quick, I'm going to chime in one more time. For those of you who are interested in that rental property or Airbnb data, like I said, I'm not sure it's going to be something that we have or that I can provide, but Melissa, at the end, can you provide the link or show where the link is to that form to request information about open data request? If all of you, anyone who's interested, wouldn't mind filling that out, it just helps for me to be able to demonstrate that there is some community interest for that as I go to try to gather that.
Yes, I was just going to plug it again as well. So as I mentioned, it's on that open.tempe.gov over here under the About, and you scroll down to the bottom and you click the link.
I tried to get to that site and I couldn't get there. Is anybody else having trouble?
Which,
Open data. I was able to get to the map one, but not the other one. Maybe it's my browser though. I'm not sure.
oh, interesting.
Maybe try, so two things, make sure you're in Chrome, and then try including the HTTPS. I just included it in the chat to see if that helps you navigate to it. Sometimes the browser will require that, sometimes it won't. I don't know enough about internet browsers to tell you why that would be the case, but try the full URL.
Yeah, that works.
Okay. So I'm going to go ahead and show you on this about page. Sorry, no, pardon, public account. So if you click on public account, and it gives you the opportunity to create your own ArcGIS Online account. This is creating an account. That's some information on how to do it. But if you want to create an account, you do sign in or sign up. And if it's the first time you haven't created one, you go down here to create an ArcGIS Online public account, and it will just ask you your name and your email address. And then you can review their policies, say that you've read them and agreed to them, and then you hit next, and it'll take you through the process. But I'm going to show you how to log in once you have it created. You just type in whatever username you came up with, and you type in your password. You can choose keep me signed in, and that way you don't have to sign in every single time. I'm not going to do that because I don't use this public account all the time, so I don't want to do that. So you just click sign in. And so this will allow you to make the maps that I mentioned from our open data. So I'm going to go back over here to this open data site again. I'm going to go to the data catalog. And I'm going to start with the neighborhood. See if I can spell it. There we go. Neighborhood associations. I'm looking for the data. And again, we have our information. And you can also, another important thing to note about any data that you're looking at is when it was last updated over here. For neighborhood associations, that's probably not going to change a lot. So, you know, this is probably pretty current. There are some things like you're asking about the census data. You can see when it was most currently updated. But we're going to scroll down here to the bottom, and I'm going to put open in ArcGIS Online. We're going to wait. So again, this is another like detail page, has a lot of the same information that you saw in the previous one. And I'm going to click on this open in Map Viewer Classic. And sometimes it takes a little longer for it to pull up the data. It just depends on your internet speed, how big the data set is. But while that's pulling up, I'm going to show you over here. This is our contents, like our table of contents, and this shows you what the different layers are. You can also look at the legend. And then if you need to, you can type in an address or a place over here. Come on. This is the rule presentations. It always takes much longer than it normally does. Well, okay, I'm going to let that do its thing, but I'm going to go back over here and I'm going to go to the open data catalog again, and I'm going to search for, maybe my grant has something to do with graffiti. So I'm going to search for graffiti data, and anything that has the number before it is related to performance measures. So it's most likely not data that you're going to be interested in. We want to know locations of data, of graffiti. So I'm going to pull this graffiti abatement incidents. And I'm going to take a look at this and see if it's what I'm looking for. So what it does is it pulls up a map of all of the incidents of graffiti over the years that have been abated or fixed. And I can click on it. And again, I get this drop down that gives me some information, just, you know, how much square footage and how many number of tags. No, this one was 100 square feet, one tag. It happened in 2016. Proactive graffiti means that the city staff identified it, found it and fixed it. It wasn't, we weren't notified of it, but we found it before we were notified. Did somebody? If I wasn't familiar with this data and I wanted to see some more information, I could click on the full details and see what it tells me, when it was last updated. The data was last updated in August, so it's pretty current. If I wanted to look at this in a spreadsheet, I could download it. And it gives you, this says CSV, and that's, again, it's similar to a spreadsheet. And that's the one we want. So I'm going to download it. It gives you some options here: generate new download with the latest data or the previous one. I want the latest. And that's going to take some time. It's a very large data set, so this will take a few minutes. So I'm not really going to be working with this. I just wanted to show you how to download the data if you wanted to. So I'm pretty convinced now. I've taken a look at it. I think this is something that I can use in my map. So I'm going to go back over here to my map, which is still not rendering, of course. I'm going to refresh it just to see if that does anything. Refresh is your friend, unless you haven't saved. Always make sure you save before you refresh. Oh, wait. It wants to. There we go. Okay, so I want to add the graffiti data to my neighborhood association. Okay, I'm sorry, I wasn't doing that earlier. To my neighborhood association, so I can see what kind of graffiti incidences are occurring in my association. So I'm going to go up here where it says add, and I'm going to do search for layers. It automatically defaults to my content. I don't have anything, and you probably won't either when you first create your account. So I'm going to change it to ArcGIS Online. Now, the thing with ArcGIS Online, this is everybody in the world who has an ArcGIS Online account and they published so that everybody can see it. So you might have to, if you're searching, you might need to type in Tempe as part of one of the key searches. But for this, I'm going to type in graffiti, and you can see I typed it earlier, abatement, and hit enter. And thank goodness, not too many people have used graffiti abatement as a title or a keyword. It only has 18 layers. And lucky enough, Tempe Data, that's our account. So that's a reliable resource, is the first one. But if you're searching for some other data and you're not sure about it, and you're searching through the map, you can click on this link right here, and it pulls up all of that information and tells you who the contact is, when it was, let's see, it was created on August 6, 2020, somewhere, where to go? Oh, last updated. So this could be useful information if you're trying to determine if your data is valid, if it's reliable. You can add to the map here, or you can just click this little plus sign. And there's your graffiti data. I'm going to exit out of this, or go back rather. This neighborhood affiliate association is these little white circles. I don't really need that. So it doesn't take up a lot of space visually, but I'm just going to turn that off. And you can do that as you're looking at your data. You can turn layers on and off, depends on what you're needing. But anyways, so I have my map now, and I have my neighborhood association. So I can scroll in to an area and see how many incidents of graffiti there have been in a given area. And you could, do maybe like a manual count or an estimate, and that would let you know. You can include that in your grant write-up. you could do that for the public art one as well. The tree inventory, probably the traffic one. So just search for them and you can find it that way. I like to look through here for Tempe specific data first, just so I can explore it a little bit more before I try to pull it into the map. And then if you want to save this into your account, you can. You just click save as the first time. And graffiti map of Tempe. It will usually require a tag of some sort, so I'm going to call it graffiti. And that's just something that the system requires. You can type a summary if that's useful. It's always good to kind of put some kind of description there.
This is just a snapshot of the time that you actually make this map, right? You can't really refresh it later, right?
The graffiti, and Stephanie, correct me if I'm wrong, the graffiti is as it's updated, it will update the graffiti. And if the neighborhood associations get updated, that would be updated as well.
That's correct. So any of the data that you see in the open data portal, if it is something that gets updated on a regular basis, if it's not updated online at the same time, it will be refreshed on some sort of schedule. So normally, depending on what it is, that could be anywhere from, like Melissa said, as it's happening to once a month, just depending on how many changes are made. If it's only a couple changes happen a month, then we may update it monthly. If it's something where changes happen more frequently, then we may do daily or weekly. And that should automatically, once the data online are refreshed, that should automatically update your map. So if you refresh your map, those data should also be updated.
Okay.
Yeah.
I back to things that are tracked. Is there any tracking of like non-emergency police calls, like loud party calls, for example, or and another thing is density of cars parked on streets, or that kind of information, I'm guessing isn't available.
I don't know about the cars parked on streets, unless if it's a call related to PD, as long as they're actually tracking the call, it would be available. And so we do have we have two data sets. One calls for service, and then the other is, I'm sorry, it's not coming to the top of my mind. There's one about, it's not called arrests, but there's one about actual, I'm sorry, it's totally not coming to me, but there are two police data sets that will include that information that's out there. They are pretty large data sets, but that should have all of the calls for service information out for the police department. And then we'll also be, hopefully within the first 6 months of next year, providing that calls for service information for the fire department as well.
So that wouldn't be segregated by type of call, though. It would be just
those data that should be in there. So a way to go in and actually filter for that should be in the calls for service. If you want to send an email to our data@tempe.gov or submit a form online and just give us your contact information, we can follow up with you and get an idea of the specific data you're looking for to help you determine whether it's actually out there or not. And we can kind of guide you through how you would make something to be able to look at that.
Yeah, I was just thinking, because I talked with Jeff from Code Enforcement and from with Ryan Cook about loud parties, so it'd be helpful to know. Like, I get neighbors calling me to put ticket, to help them with it. So I just kind of helpful to know which houses are problematic.
Yeah, if the data are out there, we can help you identify them. And then if they're not, we can circle back with Jeff and with PD to see if that's something that they're capturing and where it might be.
Okay, and I typed it here, and I don't know if you noticed, but when I did just calls for service, it was several different cities. So I just added Tempe, and here it is at the top. Tempe data is the correct account. So just so you know, that's there. And then so I did save this, and so what I can do is at the top here is a drop-down menu. I'm going to go to content. And so when I log in, here's that map. And I just click on this title and it pulls up the map again. This is the details page. It shows you which layers are included, and then you just open it and you have your map again. So, and if you make any changes to it, just click save. So, are there any other questions? I know this was a very quick how to make a map, intentionally quick, but we're happy to help, like Stephanie was saying, if you have any questions, or there's resources again on that Data Academies tab. Okay, so I'm looking at the questions. Let's see. I would like to know about the number of halfway houses, rehab houses, sober living houses in Tempe, houses for felons when they come back. I am not aware. Stephanie, are you aware of that being?
No, that data, community development likely has that data, but it's not public. It's not something that they're releasing publicly. So yeah, that data, those data are not out there.
Okay, and is there a way to see what projects the city is planning to implement in each year?
So that might be, Melissa, like CIP projects or up.
So I can clarify that. That's my question. So I think it's helpful when we're planning out grants for our neighborhoods to know what the city already has in mind, so that we're not trying to duplicate, or so we can even complement what the city already has in mind. But I have yet to be able to really track that very well, aside from just informal conversations. It seems to be a bit difficult to get really comprehensive answers on that. It seems like you need to talk to each specific department around the different, around projects that pertain to their department. So if there's something where we can see what the city is planning just comprehensively for our neighborhood, that would be really helpful for for planning what kind of grant we would want to apply for.
Yeah, Melissa,
do
I was
you
going to
mean-
say if you have the 5-year CIP. Yeah.
So, so Shauna, would the CIP include things like those streetscape projects?
Streetscape, parks,
Okay.
road improvements, right-of-way investment.
Yeah, so we're actually working with budget right now to put together some content on key CIP projects that we would share each year in a map. I don't think it would be comprehensive of all of that. That is something that's been on my radar for a couple years, and it's challenging because we would have to get everyone together to be willing to provide more detailed content about where the projects are located. But I know I keep asking this, but if you wouldn't mind submitting that open data request and kind of putting a description of exactly what you're talking about in there, it just helps me when I go to have these conversations with the departments about the types of data that people are asking for.
And then Linda has her hand raised before we continue in the chat. Linda, did you want to ask?
I did, thank you. Melissa and Stephanie, this is just so cool, all of this. My only fear is seeing myself going down a hole for hours. But so thank you very much. But the question I have maybe goes to Shauna is, do you think that staff will also use these data sets as criteria when deciding on approvals for grant proposals?
So yeah, for any of the grants and evaluation that staff does, and we can get into this more on our grant workshop, is it's based on the application submitted. So when you make a stronger case, it helps them understand, what the funding is for. What's not built in is for them to try to go out and figure out this themselves. So it's incumbent in this case for neighborhoods to do this. Stephanie can maybe speak more to this, but for the city, for public projects we're working on, it's now built into the budget process where they do have to relate it back. They have access to some of the same data and they use some of the same layers. And there is some of that same, for example, at the very beginning, some of that equity data that's built into the budget process where they tie it back to their capital ask. Because things are funded when they ask. So they also have to put together the same kind of case for their projects. If that makes sense, Linda.
It does.
Yeah, they do. And especially with the equity map, that's one of the reasons that we made it initially was for internal use, because these questions kept coming up when supplementals or CIP projects were happening, of looking at some of these core equity data sets. So it was actually developed for internal, and then we opened it to the public.
Okay, thank you.
I have one question.
And hold on, sorry, I've got some
Okay.
ahead of you in the chat,
Okay.
and then Miriam had her hand up. So Miriam in the chat asked about multi-use path information, but then Miriam, you also have your hand raised. So if you want to ask a question as well, you're welcome to, but I don't know if we have the paths in there, Melissa.
No, I just wanted to know about the multi-use path. I've been trying to get information on it and I haven't gotten, and I can't seem to find the person to give me that information. Do we know about those things, the different multi-use paths in Tempe, especially the one on Kyrene and coming down Kyrene?
We do have a data set that shows where the existing ones are, but I don't know anything about like if something's happening to them.
And that might be what Miriam, what Stephanie was saying, trying to tie in some of the capital projects. If it's
Yeah.
upcoming,
Right.
it'll be in the budget book if and we can help you find it, but but it may not be represented in the data set.
Okay, thank you.
Miriam, I think you're talking about the North-South Path, is that correct?
That's right, the North-South Path.
Yeah, I can get with you after the meeting and give you the link to that, to where it's
Okay, thanks.
You bet.
Okay, Anne, if you wanted to go ahead, and then we've got about 1 more minute, and then we'll make sure, again, that we follow up and get everyone information and all these links as well.
I had a question, on it was kind of relating to, the grant and using this to, help justify your grant. But I just wondered if anybody's really looked at, the equity versus the neighborhood associations, and whether, there is more likelihood to be neighborhood associations and people applying for grants, in higher income neighborhoods, I guess, versus, so, because there's might be more rentals and less activity. So I don't know if can you use this to map that kind of thing? And I guess you could look at equity versus neighborhood associations or
Yes, Anne, and that's what Melissa showed her. Stephanie, go ahead. I was going to say at the beginning.
Okay,
yeah,
that's
Melissa's
what
already.
I missed that. Yeah, kind of the point of that, I guess. So.
And we will be placing this on the grant website. So Melissa is pulling it up now, but if you need to go back, because I know some of it was instructional, the video will be available for everyone's use as well as your neighbors and anyone else you refer to it. So what's great about the recording is you can kind of go back at your own pace and see all the steps Melissa took and kind of follow along if you need to again.
Okay.
Were there any other questions, or Melissa, did you want to
I know that was
wrap up?
all that I had. Yeah. So.
We really appreciate everyone joining us today. As I mentioned, we're going to be placing the video on tempe.gov/neighborhood grants. And in the chat, we are joined by our Neighborhood Advisory Commission Chair, Hannah Moulton-Belleck, and she mentioned as well that our Neighborhood Commission has brought that up and has been doing additional work on that issue as well. So we will make sure and keep everyone informed on any progress we make in different areas. And again, we'll get everyone the information for the more general neighborhood grant workshop in January with some of those details on time and how to join us and all of that. So we really do appreciate your time today.
Thank you. Don't forget to, if you have those requests, please submit them here, because otherwise we don't know what you're needing. So.
Thank you.
All right, thank you.